Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today for this event and also just Discoverfest in general. We are on day 3 of Discoverfest, and it's been a total blast. We've been learning about business, we've been learning about marketing. Coming up this week, we have some language learning like German and French and just all sorts of stuff. So, thank you all for being here. My name is Jonah from Discover, and today we are talking to Ben Collins. Ben, how are you doing?
Good, thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure. I've done one event for you, and I was telling you before, I didn't, it has totally changed the way I use Google Sheets. And I was like keeping track of my own finances and stuff in Google Sheets, but just my mind was blowing after our last event. And so I'm super excited for this one. And for everyone watching, please hop in the chat before we get rolling or started. Let us know if you can hear us and see us all right. I see we already got a couple people. We got Brian tuning in from the UK.
Hello.
We got
Thanks for coming along.
We got Hydro for COVID tuning in from Newcastle, Australia. Love it. Thank you all for coming from all over the world. And it looks like everyone can hear us and see us okay. So also feel free to use that chat. Ask any questions during the presentation. Feel free to call out where you're tuning in from, like some people already have, and maybe how you heard about Discover or Ben. We love hearing all of those things. And if you're watching the replay, also feel free to pop in the comments. We do come back and love to see that interaction. And we will definitely have a period for questions after Ben's presentation. So feel free to pop questions in if they're top of mind and you want to get them out. But we will answer all those questions after Ben has gotten through his presentation. And if Ben is moving fast, I know he's got a lot to show us today, or if life happens, you have to get away from the computer for a second or anything like that, don't fret. There will be a replay available. It'll be here on the Discover page. It'll be also on the YouTube and emailed to you along with the course offer, which we'll talk about later if you signed up for the event. So, proper introductions. Like I said, we're talking to Ben Collins, and we're talking about how to use Google Sheets to run your small business. We'll look at how to gather and present user feedback, systemize your business with Google Sheets, and how to build a checklist template. A little background on Ben. Ben helps individuals and businesses better understand their data through analytical insights and visualizations. Over 20,000 professionals from 1,000 plus companies have enrolled in his training courses, including employees from PwC, Netflix, Verizon, Google, Capital One, and other Fortune 500 companies. Now, Ben, I know you got a lot to get to today, so I'm going to hand it over to you.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks very much, Jonah. And thanks, Teachable, for putting on this wonderful event. I hope you've got the chance to check out some of the other events this week. There's some amazing creators. So great. Let's make a start then. So as Jonah said, my name is Ben Collins, and I thought I would start, just give you a little background about how I came to be sitting here today and giving this talk. So my background is as an accountant, which meant I spent the 10,000 hours in Microsoft Excel and learnt the craft of spreadsheets. But it wasn't always like that, because I remember when I started, I had no idea. And one day my boss asked me to join together 2 data sets with the VLOOKUP, and I just did not have a clue. So he had to sit me down, gave me a 5-minute lesson on the VLOOKUP, and sent me on my way. And I realized I sort of had this moment of realization that I needed to get good at spreadsheets if I was going to get far in this career. If I work with data, if I work with numbers, then being good with spreadsheets and data is just a must. So instead of burying my head in the sand, I said, right, I'm going to learn as much as I can about spreadsheets, and the rest is history. So fast forwarding, I moved to America, and then that was a great decision. The next great decision I made was to leave accounting and branch out on my own, and start offering consulting and training as a little one-person business. Around about that time, I moved from Microsoft to Google in terms of the technology stack, and really just sort of never looked back from there. Really just niched down on Google software and built my blog and the courses. And I've been a really happy Teachable course creator since 2017, when I launched that first one. So I am still a solo creator, solo business person. I have a couple of assistants who do help me out a lot, but I am still a small business, and I use Google Sheets a lot, not just for teaching that topic, but also behind the scenes for running my own business. And so that's where I'm coming from today when I talk to you with this talk. So what are we going to do today? Well, we're going to talk about three things, as Jonah mentioned. This concept of a home sheet, which will really help you systemize your business and keep everything organized. The idea of an info sheet, which will help your clients and your customers and your stakeholders understand your Google Sheets, a checklist and a front sheet, and then also this data pipeline for capturing customer data, this really seamless integration between these Google products. Along the way, we're going to see some checkboxes, array formulas, conditional formatting, and a few other things as well. And of course, hopefully, we're going to have a lot of fun because Google Sheets are a lot of fun. So that's the plan for today. Okay, so before we dive into the actual nitty-gritty, the Google Sheets, the examples, what do I mean by a small business? I've given one example already, a literal small business of just a handful of employees, myself and just 2 assistants, or maybe you're a startup with 5 employees. That's a small business. And certainly some of these ideas today could be really useful and applicable in those situations. But also, I'm applying this loosely. It could be your team within a much, much bigger organization. So when I worked as an accountant, we'd always be in teams of 2, 3, 4, 5 for 5, 6 months at a time working on a project. That's a small team on its own working on a project. And you can use these ideas today to sort of manage some of those types of projects. Another example could be, as a teacher in a classroom with your students. It could be you working on a project with a client. So anytime it's a small group of people working on solving problems with Google Sheets, then these techniques today, I think, will be really useful for you. Why Google Sheets? Well, you're probably already using it if you're listening to this talk. And it's free. Obviously, that's a bonus. But it's really, really versatile and really, really powerful too. 2 huge benefits there. So you can both use it for doing your number crunching and your analysis and your charts, as well as managing information and planning and project management and that sort of stuff. It's really so versatile and covering both of those fronts. Now, it's not perfect for everything, obviously. Not trying to sell you on that today. So, of course, there are times when your teams get too big, your projects get too complex, or your business is just too big and complex that you need to move up to dedicated software. But in these small business situations, these small project situations, it's a fantastic tool, not only for the data side of things, but also for the business side of things, which is what we'll look at today. Okay, so the scene is set. We are ready to jump in with example number 1, which I call the home sheet. So let's take a look. So I use this in my own business. And the idea is that you create a Google Sheet that acts as a sort of internal wiki or directory for your business. So, as a business owner, you do lots of different things. And if you just never document anything, then every time you have to do a task, you're like recreating it from scratch. And it's really, really tedious. You make mistakes, you forget how to do things. And it's no way to run your business. So what you want to do is write process notes or standard operating procedures and try and systemize as much as possible to take that cognitive load, out of your mind, so that you can just open up a process doc and follow the steps, kind of like coloring by numbers. And once you get a bunch of process notes and then a bunch of other documents that are relevant, like tax information you need to hand, your W-9 forms, all these other things you need as a business owner, it's really important you keep on top of organizing them all. Where do they all go? Where do they live? How do I access them? And after sort of having them spread in different drive folders and desktop folders, printouts, you name it, once I digitized it all and recorded it all in this directory, it's really, really easy then for me to always know exactly where everything is, to click on it, to find it in just a few seconds. And then the icing on the cake with this method, what I really love about this is that I've set the home button on my browser to take me to that sheet. So no matter where I am on the internet, or what I'm doing, or how stressed I am, I can just press that home button and get an instant sense of calm and peace descend upon me. and I can go off and find the particular process note I need or the document I'm looking for. So it's really a really nice way to just manage your business. So let's see it in the real life, in the flesh. I'm sorry, did not want to do that. I wanted to go that one there. Okay, so here's the slide deck. Let's jump to just a Google web browser now. So here I am. I have this home button up at the top here. So it doesn't matter which page I'm on, the home button's always there. I've set that in my preferences in Chrome. You can set it on Safari and Firefox and all the browsers. I click the home button, boom, it takes me right to my home page. And here's my home sheet. I have all my lists, all my tasks that I do in my business. Obviously, this now is not my actual one. This is one where I've just, just a generic template I've created, but you get the idea. And what I have done is left one of them in that we can look at together. But basically, it's superior to, say, just storing folders, a dry folder, because I can add a lot more context. I can say who's the owner, who created it, what status we're up to. I can add extra URLs to things like a Loom video that explains things. I can include links to websites that are relevant that I need to go to, as much as you want, really. So it keeps me super, super organized as a business owner. And as I said, so here's an example where I want to turn my newsletter, my weekly newsletter, into a blog post. And once I've done it once, I've gone and created a process note for that, which I can click. I can click to open it, and then it's written out exactly all the steps you need to do, so I don't have to think through doing it next time. And also I can have my assistant Jo do it, and she can just look at the process note, follow the steps, and she can do it no problem as well. So it helps to keep me just really, really organized. I've got links to Loom videos where I need them, and Loom videos are just screen recordings showing me how to do certain things as well. So really encourage you to use this idea of the home sheet if you're a small business owner. It really keeps me super organized and gives me that sense of calm and peace when I'm working on my business. How I've set this up very quickly then is just obviously grouping things into groups, keep them nice and organized, using the background colors just to add some formatting there to break this up into steps. These over here are hyperlinks. They're saying invalid because these are just dummy ones, but this one, for example, is a real one. And it's either the hyperlink formula, which will take you to a URL, or if you've just got them in as this one here, you can right click and add links or edit links and just include those URLs. One other thing I'll show you just quickly. Excuse me. I've frozen this top row here, you'll notice, so that it stays always pinned to the top of my screen. And if I don't do that, you see it disappears. I lose the context of this. So a quick tip, if you want to freeze some rows at the top of your sheet, you can use that grab hand there. When you hover down just above just below the letters of the columns, grab the hand, drag that down, and you can freeze that top row or however many rows you want. Delete any columns to the side to make it nice and neat, keep it nice and tidy, and take away the grid lines. So if I put them back on, it just looks much nicer when you take those grid lines off if you are, if you don't need them, because it's not a sheet with lots of data in that needs to be organized. Okay, so that's the idea of the home sheet. That was the first example I want to show you. That's the simplest in the sense it's just more of a concept than anything tricky in the sheet. But I've been using that now for a couple of years and really would never go back to anything else at this stage. All right, so done one. Let's do number two. And the number two is this idea of a checklist and a front sheet. So what on earth am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about when you share data with a client, or rather when you share a spreadsheet with a client or a colleague or other stakeholders, and you just hand over a spreadsheet with all your digital scribbles in and your workings and your data and your charts, it is really, really hard to make heads or tails of that and know about how the analysis has been done, where to start from, which charts are up to date and relevant, which is just sort of workings can be ignored. So what you should do is make it as easy as possible for your users to use that spreadsheet. So if example 1, that home sheet, was making it easy as possible for you to use a Google Sheet and your business, this is about making it as easy as possible for your users of your spreadsheets. So give them a really nice welcome when they arrive in your Google Sheet. A nice big bright sheet that says, gives them a nice calm feeling and tells them how to use your Google Sheet. And this is an example we're going to look at that I created here. So again, we'll jump into a Google Sheet now. Here it is, lovely jubbly. Let me hide it first though, actually. So here we go, it's hidden. And you can imagine if I just handed this over to you, here's your spreadsheet, go nuts, have fun. You have to figure out what's here. I've got some data. Okay, looks like some data from 2019 and 2020, maybe some real estate data. Okay, then, there's some analysis going on. Not quite sure, how this has been done. It looks pretty tricky. And then, some charts as well, some reports. But again, I don't know which is relevant to me. Are these up to date? That kind of thing. I don't know anything. I don't have any of the context. So we're not really helping our user very much when we just hand them over the sheet. They have to figure all that stuff out. And the problem is then, of course, you leave it open to their interpretation. So they might interpret it differently than you, leading to some confusion or even mistakes. So let's make it easy for them. Let's just give them a nice sheet, and we've called it the info sheet. And it just makes their life so much easier if they open the sheet and this is the first thing they see. A nice heading, tell them what's going on. The first thing I've done is create a directory of the sheets that are in here. So I have this info sheet, which is just this sheet, which is why it's not linked. Then I have the data set, which is real estate transaction data from 2019 to 21. The analysis is some financial analysis and then some summary charts to share with the bank or the client or whatever. And the nice thing is that each of these are hyperlinked. So I can just click data sets, go to the data sets, click the analysis, go off to the analysis page. And so you can imagine when you've got a sheet with 20 or 30 tabs in, it's really nice to have this directory with a summary of what's there, links to each page, and that kind of thing. I know we do have the menu down here, but that doesn't give us any context or description of what these sheets are. And again, if you have 20 or 30 or more, it's still hard to see them and scroll through them all here. Whereas up here, it's much easier to see them and use them. So a nice directory, like a table of contents for your Google Sheet. Next up, a nice description. This is what happens in the sheet. This is what it's for. This is who created it. This is where the data came from, as much or as little as you want here. Again, just gives that end user some idea of what's in here and how it works and what it does. Now, obviously, you wouldn't do this for every single sheet because it's quite time consuming. But once you've created a template, it's pretty easy to then copy that into your sheets, add the details you need to, and it really delivers a big ROI when it's external sheets that are going to clients, for example, because it's really impressive. It's way more impressive than just sending over a plain old sheet. It looks like you really know what you're doing. Okay. Then down here is the idea of a checklist. So, maybe down here you send it over to your teammate. You've got a few things checked off. And you say to your teammate, can you finish off the leftover items that aren't done yet? And they know exactly what's down here, what's left. So these checklists are also really nice. A quick tip with checklists, just before we go on, is if you want to remove all of the checks in one go, you can highlight a range and press the spacebar to toggle them all on or off. So that's a really quick way of unchecking all your checkboxes, the spacebar, pressing the spacebar. Because believe me, when you've got 100 checkboxes, you do not want to be going through clicking them one by one. Nobody's got time for that. All right, so this looks good. How do we go and create this? Let's go and build one. We've got some time. Let's have some fun building one. So I've created just a version of this here called Start Here. It's just exactly the same text data, but you can see it's just plain text. It's kind of boring, and also, still doesn't look that helpful because nothing stands out yet. So we've got to make it look like a good sheet. So where do we start? Well, why don't we do some headings first, and then just go from there. So let's make this one, at least make this one, let's say 24, maybe that's a little large. Well, we'll go 24. Then we'll do 14, say for that. And then these small ones, we'll do 12 for these ones. So we can, all of these, we can hold down Control, by the way, when I'm clicking on these things, that will highlight multiple ones at once. So we'll change all those to 14. Okay, so we're going to make this much wider. In fact, I'm going to make this smaller because it's going to be, it is going to be too big. There we go. So these ones here, let's center these headings. So we'll merge them and move them into the center. Merged cells, by the way, are totally fine, provided you don't use them in your data. That would be the one time when it's absolutely a no-no. If you used a merged cell in a data set, it's going to be super confusing and people don't know which cell is which. But when you're doing headings and designing your sheets, merged cells are okay. So we'll center that one. Let's put a nice border underneath it as well, because that always makes it look more professional. So let's choose green and let's choose something thick bar and the bottom border, and we'll make it bold. And then now I can use this paint format here to format each of my headings. So that's a nice quicker way of formatting these headings. Okay, so already just with a very simple fix there with the headings and just adding these breaks, it makes the sheet way more readable already. Okay, so we still don't have much functionality here. It doesn't do much for us yet. So probably the next thing we want to do is to add some these hyperlinks. So again, this is nice and easy. It's not too difficult to add these hyperlinks. And we want to link to these sheets, as I said, that we've got the other sheets in the tab. So it's a right click and insert a link. We're not putting a URL in. We're coming down here to the sheets and named ranges. And you can select individual cells or ranges or named ranges, or what we want here is just the actual sheet itself. So dataset, do that one. Insert a link for, again, down here, sheets and named ranges, analysis. Down here, right click, insert link, results. So now let's test them, because whenever you create something in Google Sheets, make sure you test it, make sure it works. And there we go, it takes me to the data set. So that looks great. Okay, so that bit's working. That's nice. What's next? Well, let's take a look at how we had it over here. Okay, it looks much nicer when we have a little bit of banding, that row banding on there. So let's just at least add that row banding. Again, this is really nice and easy to do because they've added a way to do that through the format menu. So just this alternating colors in the format menu. So I'll highlight my range, format, alternating colors, and then we just apply any one of these color schemes, or we can choose our own colors. I'm going to uncheck the header because I don't have a header. I've already done something with the header there. We'll click done. We don't want to make any more changes. And there we go. It just makes it a little bit nicer to read. So what's next? I guess what's next really is the checklist. Let's do the checklist, because that's really the interesting piece of functionality in here. So let's talk about that. So here we go. A little tip for you again is if I want to insert a checkbox, I click a cell, come up to insert and click checkbox. And then it gives me the nice little checkbox. Now, if I want to insert more than one checkbox, which we do here, I can highlight the range, hold down Control or Command if you're on a Mac, highlight more ranges, even though they're not joined together, and then come up here to insert checkbox, and that will be a lot quicker than doing them one by one. Now, let me make my screen bigger now, actually, because we'll do some formulas in a moment. And watch this now. So pay really close attention to this formula bar here. Make it even bigger. When I check the checkbox, just look at the formula bar with one eye and the checkbox with the other eye, or the corner of one eye. Look at that. See, as I'm toggling the checkbox, it's just changing between true and false. So really a checkbox is a true or a false value, a Boolean value, just with some sort of special coating on the top, a nice checkbox look to it. So keep that in mind. It's really just a true or a false that we've got there under the hood. So at the moment, they don't do anything. Well, they do. They check, but they don't do anything with the row of data to really give us that feedback that it's done. So, there's nothing wrong with just leaving it like this, but it was nice on this info sheet when we saw when it crossed the line out for us. So yeah, let's do that. That's nice, right? So we'll highlight this and we'll go to Format. In fact, let's save ourselves a bit of time. Our future self will thank us by holding that Control key down and also highlighting the other range, because we're going to add it to these other ranges as well. So we might as well catch it all in one go instead of having to do repeat ourselves 3 times. So we've highlighted the areas that we want to apply the conditional formatting to. Format, conditional formatting. And they all turn green, which is not great. And that's because it's saying apply a format wherever the cell is not blank, or empty rather. So conditional formatting means it tests each cell in the range. So you take a range here, we've got 3 because they're separated by commas, and it just looks at each cell in turn and sees if it passes this rule we've given it. So there's a bunch of built-in rules, but what we'll do is do the custom rule, because we're going to make our own rule up. And this is what we need to do. We need to say equals, and then we enter a formula. And we're going to start with this $, which is really, really important, this $. And then I'll put B. And basically that says the test is always going to be checking column B. So even when the rule is looking at what to do with column C, it does the test still on column B, because I've told it your test is always on column B. So when you do this, when you put the $, in front of one of your letters for this rule, it will apply the whole the rule across the whole row. Okay, so we're on row 16. So we want to do B16, and we want to say equals true. Now, let's do this for now, and let's see if this works. Let me click done. Oh, we didn't change did we change formatting? Oh, let's try. Okay, let's try. Let's see what I've done here. A, it's A. I beg your pardon. I'm in column A. I was writing B and I should have been writing A. When you make a mistake, by the way, it's always a great learning opportunity. So just embrace it and learn from it. So now we can have a better understanding, because hopefully you were all screaming, Ben, it's A, it's A. You silly fool. So it's A. We want column A because that's the one with the checkbox in. We want to be locking to that column A. So now you can see, as I check, it applies whatever my rule is here to that row. Great. So let's just fix this to make it, let's say, make it gray and strike through. Yeah, that looks more like it. Tells us we're done with that concept. And you can see it just applies, it works with any of the checkboxes now. So it always tests column A to see if it's true. Now, do you remember when we were looking at that checkbox? Again, look at it up here. It's true or false, right? So this here, the A16, is always evaluating to a true or a false value. So we don't really need to check if it's equal to a true, because it's already either true, which is obviously equal to true, or it's false, which is never equal to true. So this is just superfluous. It doesn't actually need to be there, because this answer is always true or false. And so the formula is true or false. The rule is applied when it's true, not applied when it's false. So we're done. Great, let's click done. And that looks great now. It does exactly what we were hoping. All right, so that's the formula done. That's the conditional formatting for now. So now we're really motoring. looking good. So let's just do a bit more formatting now to tidy this up and make this look a bit more polished. So let's get rid of these extra columns. So I'm going to highlight one by clicking on the letter, holding down Shift and Command on a Mac or Shift Control on a PC, and then the right arrow, which will highlight all my columns, and then just delete those columns. So right click and delete them. There we are, that looks better. Let's add one to the left. And we obviously want to just get rid of that. And then unfortunately, I have to just quickly change my conditional formatting to, this is why I said B before. I should have inserted the column first. It makes it a little easier. But basically, I just want to make sure my conditional formatting now still only applies to the B and C, the actual little data table, not obviously column A. We're not interested in that. There we go. That's better. Same with this alternating rules. Let's go back up to format, alternating colors, and just make it from B to C. So we'll click OK, or done. There we go. Just because we didn't want any of that weird formatting stuff happening over here. Great, so that's looking pretty good now. What we'll do, the best step, my favorite thing to do to make it look really nice, is to come up to View and get rid of these grid lines. Yes, it's just satisfying, deeply satisfying, because it doesn't look so much like a spreadsheet anymore. It looks much more like a nice front sheet now that people can use. So that's looking great. And this is perfectly valid now. This is a great setup, a nice front sheet. I'll show you one more thing with this one that we had over here, which was this nice, how do we do this sort of funny old branding here on the side. Let's just take a quick look at that before we keep going. So I need to add some more columns. I think I need, let's say, 2 more. And you think, what is he doing? So let's make them narrower, highlight them all, and we'll just kind of make them narrower. And we'll make column C here the whole column just green like that. And then you'll see what happens is when I make this really narrow, it makes that nice sort of design there. Then let's put in that logo. So you see here I had my logo. So let's do that. Let's add in a logo. So we'll highlight this cell across the column. We'll highlight this group of cells, sort of square, and merge them, which gets rid of that border, or rather that background color. We'll insert an image in the cell. Let's browse, and here we go. We've got one ready. There we go. Just inserts that image for me. And then this is still looking too wide, so we'll clear these down, make these two a bit narrow as well, and then we'll center this one, or rather middle align it there so that it just looks like it's halfway balanced between those two. Probably we'll add just one more row above, give a bit of space up there. And there we go. That looks, it's not, I did a bit more obviously with that info sheet, but that was just some extra formatting. This is basically where we're at. And you can see how much nicer if you have a start here sheet, what a difference this makes to the whole experience for the other user of your Google Sheet. And if it's a client, they'll be much happier, seeing this as opposed to just being dumped a big bunch of data. So again, it's up to you. You can do anything you like with these front sheets. You can develop your own style, but really, I'd encourage you to consider using them when it's important spreadsheets that are going off to important people for you. Your boss, your clients, your other stakeholders. All right, that's example number 2, the front sheet and the checklist idea. I think really nice way to supercharge your sheets. So let's jump back to the slide deck. So we did this one. Example 3, folks. Let's take a look at this data pipeline. That sounds like a big, exciting word or phrase. And we're going to connect the form to a sheet into our slides. And it's really just a thing of beauty, because it just happens automatically. Somebody submits the form, and that data flows through the pipeline, pops up into the charts in your slide deck, and all you do is click a button to say update, and it's really, truly wonderful. I don't know if you've ever been had to delete all your charts out of a presentation and copy and paste all new charts back in just because you got some new data. But believe me, that I've done that way too many times in my career. So I love this new or this seamless integration, because I remember sitting there in the lawyer's office when I was a forensic accountant, huge, big, important bank clients coming in, people from the government coming in for a big litigation case. And that morning, you got a big dump of new data. And of course, the boss wants to include the new data for the presentation. The client wants to see the new data. And it's like, the serious pressure on the team all morning. And then right sort of 15 minutes before the big presentation, and everyone's looking over your shoulder, and you're cutting and pasting and deleting charts out of slides and putting new ones back in. Oh, believe me, nobody wants that stress. And with this integration, you don't have to. It's built in, it's nice, it's seamless. So this is the workflow. You have your form. It sends the answers to a Google Sheet where you've got some data happening, a little bit of analysis rather, and then that is linked to your slides. It's great. Okay, so here are some charts on some feedback from our customers on whether they like our product and how often they use it. And this is linked to a form. So let's just remember we had 11 people recommending this product so far, and 5 of them used it multiple times a day. So they sound pretty good customers. So let's pretend now we're the customer. On the website of this wonderful product, there's a link to give feedback, or maybe they've sent us an email to pester us for some feedback. And we finally relented and said, okay, I'll do it. How likely are you to recommend us to a friend? Yep, highly likely. Love the product. And how many times do we use it per week? Multiple times a day. It's brilliant. I love it. Let's hit submit. So remember, we had 11 recommended and 5 people who said they use it multiple times a day. Not many customers yet, but they're going strong. So let's submit. Back to here. I need to come out of presentation mode. So there is one caveat. I can't do it in presentation mode. So I come back out of presentation mode. Let me get rid of this. There we go. You can still see that chart. So I just hit update. Boom, 12 people recommend it. Update, 6 people use it multiple times per day. Thank you very much. Let's go back to presentation mode. And there we go. Now we're back in business. And 2 seconds just to quickly update. No problem if the client's even there. You can just quickly click update and then tell them how wonderful and up to date your data is. So let's peek under the hood and see how this works. Okay, so as I said, we have this very simple form, just a Google form with a couple of questions. Let's take a look at the actual data now. Okay, so here's the data. Let me just make that centered. And you can see what happens is that I get a timestamp of when the form is submitted. Then that score out of 5, which corresponds to that first question, just a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then here how many times they use the product, just that there. So then what I've done next is some analysis over here, which is just some little pivot tables that just add up the product, how many times per day, and just make a summary here. And then over here, again, another pivot table. Sorry, it's opening that over the top of it, whether it's recommended or not recommended. Now, hopefully you're thinking, well, where do these come from? Good question. We're going to take a look at creating them with formulas, because so far we've got this nice, 1 to 5 rating. What I decided to do was to just say, let's categorize that as falling into the recommended range or the not recommended range, because it's more meaningful than just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I decided to say, well, let's assume 1, 2, and 3 are not recommending it really. 4 and 5 are recommending it. So we need to create a formula that will work to categorize these. And thankfully, it's a nice, easy formula. We'll say if we'll say this value here is greater than 3, then we'll say recommended. Otherwise, if it's not greater than 3, it must be less than 3, and then we'll say it's not recommended. Okay, great. Yes, we'll fill down with the autofill. There we go, lovely. So we've got our formula. Now we can go away and do a pivot table, right? Not quite, because look what happens if I submit the form again. Let's say this time we're not liking the product and we don't ever use it, unsurprising. So we'll click submit, come back here, and there's our data, but you can see it hasn't been classified. So it's still blank here, which means it won't carry through to the pivot table. It won't go into the chart. So we'd have to drag this down, which is obviously a real pain and not recommended. So we need to create an array formula version that will automatically just come down here and work for us. So what we can do is this. We can say if on, and we will check A2 to A. So we're going to check the whole column now. And I won't even specify a row ending. I'll just leave it blank like that. We'll see if that's not blank. Then we'll do this one we had over here, which was to say if, this time we'll say B2 to B. So we're going to test the whole column, whereas before we just had B2 like that. This time we're going to do B. So we're going to test all the way down the column. We'll say, sorry, greater than 3, echo or not. And then finally, just the false, and we'll just leave that blank, which means if this is blank here, we'll just leave our array formula blank over here. So that looks good. We need to hold down Shift Command and Enter, or Shift Control and Enter, which is the shortcut key to add the array formula, or we can type it in. So I'll just hit that, and you see it adds that word array formula for me. But you can also just type that in like a normal formula, and you put that array formula around the outside of the regular formula. Then we'll hit enter, and you see, lovely, it just fills down for us. It's blank down here still. And now let's check, let's submit again. Submit another response. Number 5, multiple times a day, submit. And there we go. You see how now this one did not get added because it's the normal formula. We'd have to drag it down. This one just fills in automatically for us. You know, if I had more coming in here, whoops, it would need the timestamps as well. You can see it just fills out those ones for me if more forms were submitted. Right, so let's just quickly see one of the charts in the pivot table. So we'll just say insert now. Insert pivot table, new sheet. And now we can say this array formula is the one that we just created, and it says not recommended or recommended. And then we'll just drag the timestamp in as the values. Just doesn't matter really which column, as long as it's not got any blanks in it. And the timestamp I know will not have any blanks. And all it does is just count. So it's just telling me how many rows, how many answers have I had that are recommended so far. How many answers have I had that are not recommended? And then I can just highlight those two. So don't include the grand total. You don't want that as part of your chart because it will throw everything off. In fact, we could take that off if we want. And we'll insert a chart. That looks good. I can then, we've got the chart here now, which is recommended or not recommended. One thing I'll do is just change the order. So we'll go to the timestamp, change it to descending, just because I like to have that recommended one there as the big slices. The first slice, it's a little nicer to read. So then we'll copy this chart. Nice and easy. Come back over here. Let me come out of the presentation mode into my edit mode, paste this chart into here. And when I press paste, the Control V or the Command V, it asks me if I want to keep this chart in my slide linked back to the Google Sheets. And of course, yes, please, I do, because that's how the whole thing works. So here's my chart now, and you can see it has this linked button up here to tell me it's linked. So very quickly, last thing we'll do is submit one more response. We'll say 5, and let's just quickly, we had 68% recommending it. So we'll do 5, highly likely, multiple times a day, submit. And you know what's not going to come through yet, because I rushed through and forgot to do one last thing, which is on my pivot table. It's set to stop down at row 20. So the new data came in on row 21, but my pivot table only went down to row 20. So I just need to make sure that this, set that to say 1000, it's really big, make sure it's big enough to include the new row. And there we go, it's gone up to 14 now. Back in my slide deck, I can click update, and it's now up to 70%. And that's a really nice pipeline where you set it up once, you just have to set up pivot tables, and then that data just flows right through. As I said, it's a real thing of beauty, I think. So that was the third example. Wonderful. Let's go back to the slides in presentation mode. Quick recap then. So we had the concept of the home sheet. Keep yourself really, really organized, systemize your processes for your business, add it to your home tab of your browser so it's really easy to get back to, and make your life easier. Then number 2, add a front sheet to your client-facing spreadsheets to make your client's life really, really easy, or your students or your boss or whoever it is. Make their life nice and easy with a front sheet, with a checklist. And then the third one is just a nice, really clean way to collect customer feedback data that goes all the way through to your slides, so that when you're sitting there in your investor meeting, you know that all your data is bang up to date, even if people have been submitting the form 5 minutes before your presentation. Great. Well, that's everything I wanted to show you. I'm going to click on to the next slide and hand back over to Jonah.
Ben, thank you so much. And first off, I every time I watch one of your presentations, I'm just like, I've been doing this wrong. But I love, especially, I can't accentuate that last tip, the ability. So like, if you have a presentation, I just want to clarify, you have a presentation that you regularly show, whether it's new clients or new prospective businesses or your boss or anything, you don't have to be spending time updating that from forms, from wherever you're pulling this data. Are there other places you can pull data other than forms?
Yeah, so if you you can use connectors, other third-party tools that connect your Google Sheets to a whole multitude of marketing tools.
Mm-hmm.
And then anytime you've done that sort of analysis in your sheet with a chart or even a table, actually, if you then copy that into your slides and you link it, you keep it as a linked object, that data will just flow right through. So even if you don't use the Google Form piece, you can still use that Google Sheet to slide automatic link, which is really nice.
I love that. That is so sleek. Maybe it's funny to get excited about Google Sheets, but here's the right time to do it, right? If we're
This is the place to do it. Yeah, exactly. Right.
So let's talk about your course a little bit. So you've given us some awesome, very actionable tips that we can use either just for ourselves, our business, or or to get new customers and stuff. But can you give us a little more information about the course you're offering? I imagine you go much more in depth. There's a lot more tools and utilities there.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I just reiterate that point I made at the start of the presentation, actually, with my own career, is, just not to underestimate how important and how far spreadsheet skills can take you, because it's the de facto platform for offices around the world for working with data. And so if you're comfortable in that environment, it really helps you with your career, and it makes you such a valuable team member. You'll find your teammates coming to you to solve problems and help them, and suddenly you get tasked with all the most interesting projects because of your skills there. So well worth learning. And this course, it's aimed at people who are fairly new to spreadsheets, who want to learn, build their skills, up to people who are sort of past the beginner level but early intermediates and really want to solidify and not sure what they're missing and things like that. So it gives you a really great foundation of all the major topics. So it includes the things we covered today. So it does include that workflow with the slides and the forms and things, pivot tables, VLOOKUP formulas, all the sort of key functions. Gives you a really good solid base to build your spreadsheet knowledge from. So it's 45 lessons, 41 videos, and all the templates are included. And you can join, you get membership to our private Facebook group for questions and chat and things as well.
Which super useful, because no matter how well you know this, I'm sure there's little quirks or things that come up all the time where it's helpful to have a community to learn this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a nice community there with lots of people who share their advice and jump in and answer questions as well. And I active in that group when I can as well, of course.
Awesome. Well, and for everyone watching, feel free to pop in the chat, ask any questions you want. We have Ben for a little longer, and we already have some questions there. But also, Ben's course is available. It's in the comments section. It's pinned to the top. It's also in the description, the link for that, and it will be emailed to you along with the replay video. But for Discoverfest also, we are offering a bit of a discount, right? Do you want to...
Yeah, so 30% off right now through Discoverfest. So it's available for $69 today.
That's awesome. And I was just thinking, I can't even accentuate, like, I've started using, since your last event, I've started using Google Sheets much more heavily for my own business and stuff. I had it on Power or on Excel, and then I was on various other platforms, but Google Sheets, the ability to integrate is so good. But even just, I went on a vacation with my partner who's very versed in all of this. And afterwards, when we were trying to figure out who owes what for what stuff, I was prepared to sit down for an hour and look at my credit card, and in 2 minutes she was in Google Sheets and had everything.
Yeah,
I can't accentuate how applicable it is. It's so awesome. Yeah.
When you started there, Jonah, saying when we went on vacation, I thought you were going to say we started doing Google Sheets stuff on vacation. I was like, that would have been good.
Well, a little bit. But, I learned afterwards she was already entering stuff in Google Sheets, which is
as you went. There you
go. But yeah, we got a couple questions rolling in, and want to use the time we have to make sure we answer those. So Carlos was asking, that is the wrong. Sorry, Neil was asking, can you hyperlink to a specific cell or section of a spreadsheet?
Yes, you can. You can. Let's go back to this page here. If you want, just want to share my screen. Yeah. Let's say we wanted to. Let's make a cell down here. Something really important, and we want to link to this particular cell. So we could have, the word important here, and then let's just insert a link. The sheet, select, arrange. Now I have to find it again. Here we go, at least there. So we'll click OK. And then, that will now take me to that page. And just to make sure I'm not cheating, we'll go back up here. And there we go. It puts it actually right up in your top corner. So that looked a bit weird, but there it is. So yeah, you can do that. You can link to, a range like a table or something as well. So no problem.
So across all the and then I imagine you can you also link to like sections of a presentation and things?
Yeah, I mean, you can add. It looks like you probably go direct to actual particular slide as well, but you can just use any URL of a Google slide deck or a website, and
Right.
Either just paste that in or use the hyperlink formula as well. Sometimes, which is useful if you want to maybe build your links with a formula. Sometimes you might have all these various ways of setting up your links using the hyperlink formula instead, and you would just put the link in like that.
Right, and that takes you there. Awesome. And then just want to get to all these questions, so I'm just going to keep going here. Is there in Google Sheets something as styles like Google Slides to change colors and fonts in one step, for instance?
There is. It's called themes. Up here, theme actually, sorry. And if you click on that, I don't use it much myself actually, and but you can see when I made that change there, it's changing at least the fonts. Let's see if I go to my results page. It might be, there we go. It's easier to see here. So under theme, you can choose all these different ones. You can then customize the theme and save it and things like that. So you have got that option as well, actually, which will save a bit of time if you want to keep applying the same thing.
That's and it looks like probably when you go to customize, you have control over most of those aspects.
Yeah, you can change the colors and the styles.
Yeah. Cool.
So,
just popping down here, Lisa is asking, is there a way to center the form response for the value? So each time number value was default to right justify.
Yeah, good question. And you'll see what Lisa meant was, so numbers are always right aligned. And the reason they do that is because, if I have 99.99 and then 437.99, those decimal places are lined up because if they were centered, then it's more difficult for your brain to determine how big these numbers are. So numbers by default are right aligned. So what Lisa was saying is when these forms get submitted, like if I take this formatting off for a moment, they're all right aligned because they're numbers, which, there's no problem with that. That's fine. But when they're next to text like this, it's easy to kind of miss them or think the column's empty. So I like to just sometimes center them because it's much easier to see them when they're these types of things, because there's no, I'm not going to get any decimals here. I don't need to really pay attention to that. Unfortunately, when we submit a new form, as we saw here, when I had this here, it just adds the new one right aligned. And there's no way, unfortunately, to override that. When new data comes in, it's going to just be over here. So periodically you have to come in and center it. One thing, you could write a piece of app script that when the form is submitted, that triggers the app script to run to center this column, and then they would be centered. But that would maybe is a little extreme, but definitely
Right.
it wouldn't actually be too difficult. But yeah, there's no way you can do it though, just with any formatting you set. When it adds the new one in, it just puts in the defaults with that new one.
Right. You can't like pre-format an entire column. Yeah. But and maybe not terrible though, because then at least there's some like you have to go in and double check that everything's working well.
Yeah.
Also, I got Lisa was also asking, can you please review the array formula copied to the new form response?
So I think this one here, I think, is the question, right?
Yes. Yeah,
sure. So let's clear it out and do a new one. So basically, well, with this, what we want to do is the array formula will take array instead of just or let's think about it like this actually. With a regular formula, it usually just gives you the output in one single cell. So you think of a sum, you take a big column, you sum it up, it gives you a single number output. So with an array formula, what it will do is it will take a range, a column of or rows, of all these different values, and perform the calculation over and over and over and over for you for that whole range you give it. So it just saves you having to write, like we did here, write every single formula on every single row. You can write one formula excuse me, that copies down the whole column. And so the advantage here is because the data is being added automatically, of course, it just means we don't end up with this scenario with missing formulas, because we don't have to manually, copy it down to these ones. So what we'll do is just check whether we have a blank, any data, first of all, basically. So we want to check the whole of column A because we know our data is going to grow. So we don't want to stop at row 21, like I had that example with the pivot table where the new data wasn't included. We want to make sure we go include any new data in the future. So we're going to start with the if formula. We're going to just test if column A is got some values in or not. So we'll say A2. Let me just clear that off for the moment. A2 to A. And you'll see I leave off the row reference. So I'm just saying, is there data there? And I say not equal to the empty string. Is there basically testing for whether it's got stuff in or not. So is it not blank? Is it got something in? And then the answer when it's got something in is we'll just basically do this one we did here, which is if B2. And this time we're going to check the whole column. So it's the array formula will run down A, checking if it's blank, and then run down B, doing that calculation for us. So B is greater than 3. So it's the same formula as in F when we did the original one, but now just working. So we'll just say rec, not rec, to save my spelling. It just tests now every row in column B, and I again left off any kind of end reference to it. And then when it is blank, so when this is false, it's not blank, i.e. it's blank, then we just leave, we just have it nothing. We say don't put anything in that cell. And then we need to turn it into an array formula by holding down Shift Command or Shift Control if you're on a PC or a Chromebook, and enter, which just adds, you see it added that and an extra bracket at the end. It just adds the array formula designation. And then when we hit enter, it will fill that hole down as far as the not blank there. But it's still just testing all of these blank rows.
Right.
But there we go. So yeah, and we'll make these templates available. Actually, that's one of the things to mention. They'll be on the replay page, so you'll be able to actually dig in and dissect this formula then.
That's all, and that has those formulas in it and everything.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. And just a clarifier that came up from Neil: can you use array formula with existing formula you have, so long as you put the array formula in front and change the A2? So, like, if you already have these formulas, can you just add the array formula aspect?
You can, yeah, most of the time. I mean, there's more to it than that. Obviously, it gets a bit more challenging, and not every single formula works. Most of them do, but that's the basic gist. Is you take a regular formula. So I'd advise setting up like that, and then you change the range to be, and it doesn't have to go. It can be a smaller. It doesn't have to be that open-ended thing. It could just be a defined range. But
right.
That's the basic gist. Is you just plonk in a range now instead of a single cell, and then use the array formula wrapper to say I want the output across multiple cells as well.
That's awesome.
So,
well, we do have to wrap up just for time because we got another event after this. But a couple summaries. So first off, just these resources, these templates, like you just said, they're on the event page. And then also, do you have a website? Can you call out your website or a place where there's more resources?
Sure, yeah. If you want to pop up the slide again, actually.
Yeah.
Just very quickly. I just want to show you this as well, the bye-bye range. Column bye-bye. So you can find me at benlcollins.com, and I have a weekly newsletter as well, all about Google Sheet tips. So you might want to check that out on benlcollins.com. And then Twitter is the other places I hang out as well. benlcollins.com, Ben L. Collins, on Twitter, where I just share Google Sheet tips as tweets, and
That's
also
awesome.
say hi and talk those up. So
Right. Love it. And
great.
yeah, thank you so much. I always appreciate learning more about all the different things you can do and all the different applications. And thank you, everybody, for watching and being present and active in the chat. It's super fun to have you all here. And please check out in the description. We do have a link for the entire schedule for this whole week of Discover events. We're trying to bring folks like Ben Collins out to share their expertise and grow this community of creators, entrepreneurs, and just general intellect and knowledge. So it's such a blast. And Ben, before we wrap up, I did want to ask just like one more question. If you're kind of like me and you're starting to just like go like, holy heck, like what can you do with Google Sheets? Like, where's the best resource or the best place to go just to like find all the different things you can get into?
Good question. I mean, there's quite a few people now who create resources online. They have blogs like myself. So you saw my website. Then there's also another one for more advanced function stuff called infoinspired.com. Then there's a lot of stuff for AppScript as well. AppScript Pulse is like a AppScript community for coding and automation in Google Sheets. But yeah, if you want, send me a message on Twitter and we'll share some more resources there. So yeah.
Love it. Great. Well, thank you again. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Jonah. And thank you everybody for coming along. I hope you enjoyed that.
Pleasure to have you all. And everyone, please like and subscribe to the Discover channel if you had a good time like I did here, trying to just continue to grow and bring more people like Ben out here. So have a wonderful day. We'll see you all soon.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Cheers.